The rain came down like whispers on the pavement, soft but persistent, carrying the scent of corn tortillas and wet stone through the air. It was late in Mexico City, the kind of late where the streetlights flickered and the traffic thinned out, leaving only taxis and stray dogs wandering under neon signs. The city never truly slept, but tonight it had curled in on itself like a tired child. Alejandro Torres stepped out of his private car near Reforma Avenue, sharply dressed in a black wool coat, his shoes polished enough to catch the glow from the lights above. 34, ruthless, brilliant, and rumored to be the youngest billionaire in Latin America, Alejandro was the CEO of several tech companies that had quietly taken over South America's digital economy. His name had weight, like a stone dropped into water, silent at first, but spreading fast. He had just left a gala at the Four Seasons, where everyone drank imported champagne and smiled with teeth too white to be real. Deals had been made, hands shaken, fake laughs exchanged. But inside Alejandro, something twisted. Lately the victories felt empty, like tasting food with no flavor. He didn't know why, but instead of letting his driver take him home to the penthouse above Polanco, he waved him off. "I'll walk," he said quietly. "I need air." The driver hesitated. "Señor, it's raining." Alejandro didn't respond. He just adjusted his coat and stepped into the mist. He walked aimlessly through narrow streets still alive with flickers of life. A tamale vendor packed up his cart beneath a tarp. A man whistled off-key from a doorway. Laughter echoed from a cantina. Alejandro kept going until the polished streets gave way to cracked sidewalks and flickering lights. And then, just past a shuttered taco cart near a darkened corner, he saw her. A child. Lying on a flattened cardboard box beside the cart, curled up like a kitten beneath a worn pink blanket. Her shoes had holes in them. Her black hair was tangled, pressed against a small rolled-up backpack like a pillow. Raindrops dotted her eyelashes. Her lips moved softly, like she was whispering in her sleep. Alejandro stopped. His heart did something strange. It faltered. He looked around. No adult in sight, no nearby shelter. Just a girl, maybe 5 years old, sleeping beside an empty food stall in the rain. He crouched down slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Hola," he said gently. "Are you okay?" The girl stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes too big for her face, dark and calm, the kind that had seen too much and still held something kind inside. She didn't scream, didn't recoil. She just looked at him with eerie stillness. "Are you real?" she whispered. Alejandro blinked. "What?" "My mama says angels come in coats when you need them the most," she murmured, her voice hoarse from the cold. "You look like one, but your eyes are sad." His breath caught in his throat. What do you say to that? What does a man who owns jet fleets and software patents say to a child who sleeps on the street and still believes in angels? "What's your name?" he asked. "Lucia," she replied, then added, "I'm not scared. I was just waiting." "For what?" "For someone to care." Something shattered in Alejandro's chest, quietly, without drama, like a glass cracking under pressure. He looked down at her small shoes soaked from the rain, her fingers curled tightly against her chest. He unbuttoned his coat and slipped it off, carefully wrapping it around her. It dwarfed her. She sank into it like a cloud. "Where is your mama?" he asked. "She went to find dinner. Said she'd come back before the taco man closes." Lucia pointed weakly at the abandoned cart. "But he already left." Alejandro sat down on the wet sidewalk beside her. He didn't know why. He just did. "You shouldn't be alone," he said quietly. Lucia shrugged, then leaned into him slightly. "It's okay. I have stories in my head. They keep me warm." Alejandro looked up at the sky, now weeping lightly over the city's cracked sidewalks. He thought of all the stories he had silenced in himself over the years, the dreams traded for power, the softness buried under spreadsheets. "Do you want to come with me?" he asked softly. "Just for tonight, somewhere warm." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her tiny backpack and pulled out a torn paper. A photo. A woman, young, tired-looking, holding the same girl on her lap in a faded pink dress. "That's Mama," Lucia whispered. "She said not to go with strangers. But you don't feel like a stranger. You feel like waiting." "Waiting?" he asked, confused. She nodded. "Like you've been waiting to be found, too." His chest felt tight. The rain blurred the edges of everything. He didn't know what to say, so he didn't say anything. He just sat there, next to her, coat wrapped around both of them like a cocoon, as the night deepened and the city forgot them. And then, footsteps, hurried, uneven, panicked. A woman came running around the corner, breath ragged, her hair plastered to her face from the rain. Her eyes scanned the alley until they landed on Lucia. "Lucia!" she cried, nearly collapsing in relief. The girl stirred, smiling. "Mama, look, he stayed." The woman scooped her into her arms, shaking. She turned to Alejandro, her face wild with fear and distrust. "Who are you? What the hell are you doing near my daughter?" Alejandro stood slowly, hands raised. "I didn't touch her. I was just here." She was alone. The woman's eyes darted down to the coat. "Is that yours?" "Yes." "Why?" He didn't have an answer. Or maybe he had too many. Lucia, still nestled in her mother's arms, whispered, "He's not bad, Mama. He's the kind of cold that makes you warm." Alejandro swallowed hard. The woman, her name, he would learn later, was Sophia, looked at him, eyes flickering with all the places she'd slept, all the men she'd feared, all the nights she'd waited for morning to come. Then she said, very quietly, "Thank you, but stay back." He nodded. "I will." They didn't speak again for a long time, not until Sophia said, "There's a shelter 2 blocks up, but it's full tonight. We'll stay under the bridge." Alejandro didn't move. Then slowly, he pulled out his phone. "There's a small hotel on Avenida Juarez. Quiet. I'll pay for 1 night. You don't have to give me your name. You don't owe me anything." Sophia stared at him. "Why would you do that?" He looked at Lucia. "Because I can." The rain kept falling, and for reasons none of them understood yet, they walked together, not knowing that 1 night in a city that never sleeps would change all their lives forever. The hotel was small, wedged between a dentist's office and a convenience store, its yellow sign flickering like a weak heartbeat. Inside, it smelled faintly of bleach and old cigarette smoke, but it was clean, quiet, dry. Alejandro didn't follow them past the front desk. He just handed his card over, said the room was for 1 night only, room 206, and then turned to go. Sophia hesitated by the stairs. "You're really not coming in?" He shook his head. "Number that wouldn't be right." She studied him again. Rich men didn't give things without expecting something back. They certainly didn't stand in the rain and hand over $1,000 coats to strangers. Still, her voice was cautious. Thank you for not being like the others. Alejandro gave a half smile. I'll check back tomorrow, just to make sure you're okay. And then he left. Upstairs, Sophia opened the door to a modest room with a single bed, a tiny bathroom, and an old TV bolted to the wall. She laid Lucia gently on the bed, pulled the covers up, and kissed her forehead. The girl was already drifting off again, still cocooned in Alejandro's heavy coat. Sophia sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at her hands. They were cracked, red at the knuckles, always cold. She used to wear gloves in winter, leather ones lined with fleece. But those days were gone. She hadn't always been like this, not always sleeping in bus stops and chasing down warm meals. 2 years ago, she had a job, a life, a future. She had worked in a small cafe in Coyoacán, owned by an old couple who treated her like family. She ran the grill, made quesadillas that tourists would post on Instagram, and stayed after hours to scrub the floors until they gleamed. But then COVID came like a wave with no warning. The cafe closed within weeks. Rent piled up. The landlord didn't care about her child, only the missing pesos. Then came the eviction, the shelters, the alleyways. Lucia's father? Gone. Vanished one night with the last 500 pesos in her bag and a lie about buying diapers. She never saw him again. Sophia had no parents to call, no cousins with spare rooms. She had nothing but her daughter and a backpack with 3 shirts, a picture, and a little tin box of hair ties and bandages. That tin box now sat on the nightstand. She stared at it as the city hummed outside. In the morning, Lucia woke first, stretching beneath the thick coat like a kitten in the sun. "Mama," she said sleepily, "can we keep the coat?" Sophia chuckled softly. "I think it's more expensive than our whole life." "But it's warm," Lucia said, "and it smells like mint." Sophia leaned over, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. "Let's just enjoy it for now." Downstairs, the front desk buzzed around noon. When Sophia opened the lobby door, Alejandro was waiting with 2 steaming cups of coffee and a small paper bag. "Tamales," he said. "Still warm." She blinked, surprised. "You came back." "I said I would." "You don't have to keep proving you're not a bad guy," she said, though her tone was softer now. "I'm not proving anything," he replied. "I just wanted to see if Lucia still thinks I smell like mint." Lucia peeked from behind her mother's legs, shy but smiling. "You came back." Alejandro crouched slightly. "I said I would, didn't I?"
Lucia nodded solemnly. "I saved you a story." They ate the tamales sitting on a bench outside the hotel. The sun weak but trying its best. Sophia didn't eat much, more out of habit than mistrust, but she watched Alejandro as he laughed. At something Lucia said about a dragon who lived in a trash can and guarded a treasure of gum wrappers and lost keys. He laughed like a man who hadn't laughed in a while. "So what do you do?" she asked suddenly. Alejandro hesitated. "I run a business. Tech. Nothing that makes good stories." "Is that why you walk around handing out coats?" she teased, raising an eyebrow. He shrugged. "Not usually." They didn't talk much after that. But when he left again that afternoon, he gave her a small card. "My office," he said. "Just in case." Sophia stared at the expensive paper, then at the name printed in clean black ink. Alejandro Torres, CEO, Navadex Systems. She almost dropped it. "Wait," she whispered. "You're that Alejandro Torres?" He paused, then nodded. I didn't want to lead with that. Her face shifted, the warmth vanishing. So this is charity? No, he said quickly. This was never about that. Then why didn't you tell me who you were? Because I didn't want to be that person with you. Sophia looked down at Lucia, who was busy drawing stick figures in the fog on the window. She looked back. At him, something unreadable in her eyes. People like you don't see people like me. I'm seeing you now. She didn't respond. She just closed the door. That night, Alejandro sat in his apartment, the skyline sprawling outside his. Floor-to-ceiling windows. He'd sat through board meetings, signed international contracts, even spoken at TEDx events. But tonight, none of it mattered. All he could think about was a little girl in his coat, and the woman who looked at him like she wanted to believe, but had forgotten how. And somehow, he wasn't okay with that ... 3 days past. Alejandro didn't press. He didn't call or show up at the hotel. He gave Sophia the space she clearly needed. But each morning, like clockwork, he found himself driving past the small corner where he'd first seen Lucia asleep beneath that taco cart. And each night, he lay in bed wondering if they were still there, if they had checked out of the hotel, if she had thrown his card away, if he'd been just another wealthy man trying to feel good for 5 minutes ... by the 4th day. He couldn't take it anymore. He returned to the hotel, asked the front desk if room 206 had checked out. The clerk blinked, then nodded. Yes, Senator, 2 days ago. No forwarding address. No word ... Just gone. Alejandro stood on the sidewalk for a long time. Cars passed. Horns blared. Life went on, indifferent. That evening, he sat in his office, surrounded by glass and chrome, flipping a pen over his knuckles. Then he called his assistant. I need a quiet search, he said. No agencies. Just you. A woman named Sophia Marin. Early 30s, with a daughter named Lucia. They were at Hotel Madeira 2 nights ago. Start there. His assistant, Elena, knew better than to ask why. Got it. That night, Sophia sat on a bench near the train station in La Merced, Lucia asleep across her lap. They hadn't stayed in the hotel more than 2 nights. Not because it wasn't safe, but because it was too safe. Too good. And Sophia had learned the hard way. Good things always came with a price. The longer you enjoyed them, the higher the cost when they were ripped away. Still, the nights since had been colder. Lucia missed the thick coat, missed the soft pillows, missed Senormenta, her new nickname for Alejandro. But Sophia couldn't risk it. She couldn't let herself fall into something she didn't understand. She told herself she was protecting Lucia. What she didn't admit was that she was protecting herself. Tuned out by the 6th day, Alejandro's assistant had results. He waited until 7 p.m. when he knew Sophia might be looking for a warm place to feed Lucia. And sure enough, when he turned the corner near the public shelter in La Merced, he saw her. She was holding a plastic container of rice and lentils, kneeling beside Lucia on a patch of cardboard, feeding her with slow, practiced care. He stood a few feet away, hands in his coat pockets. You left without saying goodbye, he said softly. Sophia didn't look up. I didn't think you'd notice. I noticed. Lucia squealed. Senormenta. She dropped a spoon and ran to him, wrapping tiny arms around his legs. You came back. Alejandro bent down and hugged her, his voice thick. Of course I did. Sophia finally looked up, and something in her expression wasn't anger, but shame. I didn't mean to disappear, she said. I just got scared. Of me? Of what you represent. He stepped closer. I don't want anything from you, Sophia. But you could take everything, she whispered. That's what power does. It gives and then takes away. Alejandro swallowed hard. Then let me give you something I can't take back. She raised an eyebrow. Like what? He reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a folded piece of paper. An offer letter, official, with a salary. Kitchen assistant. Community meal program. Come work for me, he said. I'm funding a local food initiative. We're building mobile kitchens for underserved neighborhoods. We need someone with heart, with skill, with vision. Sophia stared at the letter, her hands trembling. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a future. What if I mess it up? Then we try again. Lucia tugged at her mother's sleeve. Mama, if you cook again, can I be your helper? Sophia looked at Alejandro for a long time. Then, finally, she nodded. I'll try, she said. Good, he replied. Then so will I. Asterisk, asterisk. The mobile kitchen launched within 2 weeks. Alejandro didn't make a grand announcement. No press, no cameras. Just a truck with polished steel counters, stocked shelves, and Sophia's name quietly listed on the permit as lead coordinator. The project ran off donations from a private philanthropist. Sophia never asked who. She didn't want to. No. Every morning, she showed up before sunrise. Hair tied back, apron snug. She diced onions and stirred giant pots of pozo while Lucia helped hand out paper napkins and peppermints to waiting families. Alejandro visited often, but never hovered. He dropped off supplies, checked equipment, shared coffee in paper cups. On the curb, while Lucia colored at their feet. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they didn't talk at all. And still, the space between them softened, slow and unspoken. Then one afternoon, everything broke. It was hot. Sophia had just finished prepping tamales when she stepped inside the storage room and heard voices. Elena's voice, Alejandro's assistant, and Alejandro's. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop. But the moment she heard her name, she froze. I've transferred the funding from the foundation's account, Elena said. The project's now officially listed under Hearth Initiative, tied to your personal trust. Good, Alejandro replied. I don't want my name on any of this. You sure she doesn't know who paid for the truck? I'm sure, and I'd like to keep it that way. Silence. Then Elena's soft question. Why her, Alejandro? Why this woman? There was a pause so long Sophia held her breath. Because she doesn't know she's saving me, Alejandro said. And if she ever thinks she's just another charity case, I'll lose her. Sophia backed away from the door like it burned her. Her heart thundered. Her chest felt tight. All this time. The job, the kitchen, the truck, it wasn't fate. It wasn't community. It was him. She was a project. That night, after the last meals were served and Lucia had fallen asleep in the back of the truck, Sophia confronted him. You lied to me. Alejandro turned, surprised. What? This kitchen? This job? You paid for all of it, didn't you? He hesitated. Sophia, you made me believe I earned this, that it was my effort, my skill. But it wasn't. It was your pity. No, he said, stepping forward. It wasn't pity. Then what was it? She snapped. A redemption story? A guilty billionaire's way of proving he still has a soul. Asterisk, asterisk, his face twisted in pain. It was hope. For who? For me, he admitted. You made me feel something again. You made me care. Sophia's hands shook. And now what? I'm supposed to be grateful? To love you for saving me? No, he said quietly. You were never the one who needed saving. She stared at him for a long, painful moment, then whispered, You should have just let me go that night. She turned, lifted Lucia gently, and walked away without looking back. Alejandro didn't stop her, because this time he knew he couldn't. The days after felt hollow. Alejandro returned to his routines. Boardrooms, contracts, glass elevators, pressed suits. But everything echoed. Every espresso, every spreadsheet, Every elevator chime reminded him of something missing. Not something, someone. Stop visiting the truck. Stop checking the supply reports. His assistant noticed but said nothing. One night, Alejandro walked alone through the streets of La Merced, past shuttered fruit stalls and rusted fences. He stopped in front of the taco cart where it had all started. The same bench. The same flickering lamp. The place where Lucia had slept, and where something inside him had woken up. He sat there until his coat soaked through from the mist. And for the first time in years, he let the silence hurt down the block. A voice called out, "Senormenta?" He turned. Lucia stood in the drizzle, her small hands clutching a plastic umbrella decorated with stars. "You left," she said, frowning. "Did you forget your promise?" Alejandro crouched down slowly. "No, mi niña. I just thought maybe your mama didn't want me around anymore." Lucia pouted. "She cried when you didn't come." His throat tightened. "She did?" She nodded. "She still makes pozole, but it doesn't taste as happy now." He chuckled softly despite himself. "Happy soup, huh?" And she keeps looking at the door like you might walk through it." Alejandro stood. "Can you take me to her?" Lucia grinned and grabbed his hand like nothing had changed. Minutes later, he stood at the back of the truck where Sophia was washing pots in silence. Her back was to him, her shoulders square but tired. He didn't speak. He waited when she finally turned and saw him. Her eyes didn't flare with anger, just sadness. And something softer beneath it. "I'm not here to defend myself." He sighed. "You were right. I should have told you the truth." She said nothing. "I didn't help you because I felt sorry for you. I helped because I saw who you were even when the world didn't. And I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to stand beside it." Sophia lowered her gaze. "I didn't want to be someone's rescue story." "You weren't," he said gently. "You were mine." That made her look up. He took a shaky breath. "I spent years building things, empires, companies, faceless products. But none of it made me feel human. Until I met a girl in the rain who told me I looked like someone waiting to be found." Lucia peeked from behind a crate. "That was me." Alejandro smiled at her, then turned back to Sophia. "I don't care if we never call it love," he said, "or if we do. But I know I want to show up. Again and again. Not as a hero. Just as someone who finally learned how to stay." Sophia stared at him for a long moment. Then, quietly, "You didn't save me." He nodded. "I know." "What?" "You saw me." "I did." Her eyes glistened. "Then stay. If you still want to." He stepped forward. "I never wanted anything more." That night, they closed the truck together, side by side, hands brushing. Lucia skipped ahead on the sidewalk, singing to herself, and behind her, two people who had once been strangers now walked not as rescuer and rescued, but as equals. As a beginning. 1 year later, in a quiet corner of Mexico City, nestled between old stucco walls and flower-covered fences, stood a small cafe called Esperanza. Inside, the scent of cinnamon, masa, and fresh herbs danced through the air. Sophia moved through the kitchen with her apron dusted in flour, her laughter echoing through the tiled halls. Lucia, now 6, handed out menus with peppermint candies tucked inside. And Alejandro? He manned the register, terribly. He still couldn't count change without help, but he smiled more than he ever had before. The cafe didn't belong to one of them. It belonged to all three. And in the warmth of its walls, no one was a project. They were simply home. Asterisk, asterisk.